on tool sharpening. So without further ado, Hank, take it away.
Thank you. This is, I hate to tell you that this is a repeat performance of one I did in April of 2016. So it's been a couple of years since I did it. There's some handouts. Why are we dark? Oh no, I don't need the light, but it does help to show off some of the tools and stuff. Let's see, I've got a camera here. Does this one work? Ah, there we are. Okay, we got hands, we can see. Okay, let me get started. There's a lot of different ways that you have of cutting wood. And I don't want to try to prejudice anybody today to say that, hey, what I've got up here is the only way to do it, because it's not. Tools cut wood because they're sharp and because they're presented correctly for the type of cut that you want. If your tools are dull, they're dangerous. So dull's dangerous, sharp is safe. And I know a lot of people don't think that way, but I do. And I've had enough experience to know that dull is dangerous. So I just want to start out with that. Now, there are 3 different types of systems that people use to sharpen with. One is a belt system by Sorby, which is basically a abrasive belt that runs around, and they're very prevalent in the knife making industry. But they're expensive. You start out at $500 for the basic system, and then you go up to $1,600 if you want that. I've used them at demonstrations, and they work fine. They're really good. I like them because with most tools, when you're using them on a wheel, you're going to get a concave kind of shape to it, and these belt systems do away with that. The other thing about a belt system is that they've got a lot of adjustments on them so that you don't have to mess around with a whole bunch of jigs and fixtures. It's basically on the machine when you start working with it. So another type is the low-speed water wheel systems like the Tormek T8 sharpening system, and these are real popular in Germany and overseas. Glenn Lucas, when he teaches, he has a system of templates and things where he uses a Tormek quite a bit. A Tormek is a 10-inch wheel that turns at about 150 RPM. It's a real slow speed type of thing. It's really good for knives. Peter's got one over there. And it's the one I used until I started doing a lot of lathe work, because to me it's a very peaceful kind of machine. There's no arc and spark. It's just a real nice machine. And if you've got the $730 to $1,600 for it, then that's the one for you. Yeah.
The Tormek, the patent ran out on it, so now you can get it by Jet and other people for about half the price.
Yeah. Okay. I would make sure that if you're going to buy one that's not Tormek, that the jigs will work. That it's got a good jig system. I found that some of the stuff from the Jet, for example, which I have a little bit of experience with, the Tormek jig and the Jet jigs are not interchangeable for some of the pieces. So it's cautionary to do that. Yeah, Grizzly has one out. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, the slow speed systems are great. I like them a lot. The standard workhorse is what we've got here. This is the club setup and the one that I want to be talking about today. The slow speed grinders, 8-inch. If you go to 6, you tend to wear the wheels out faster, and you also have a more concavity to the grind that you have. So I like the 8s because they last the wheels last a long time, and they're real easy to use. Now, you don't have to have a grinder. You can go and use carbide cutter tools. A few years ago, Easy Wood came out with a set, and now I know that there's at least 5 or 6 different manufacturers for the carbide cutter type of things. And all those is they give you the tool and they sell you a cutter for about $12 to $22, depending on what you're getting. and you screw that sucker in there, and you use it till it gets dull, and then you rotate it and use it till it gets dull, and then at some point you throw it away and get another cutter. The nano carbide is really revolutionized these tools because it gave you a very good cutting edge. Before, carbide and wood did not get along too well together because carbide, some of the characteristics of carbide were just not, didn't present well to the wood fiber, let me put it that way. And so you got a lot of tear out.
Sharpen those things on the
No,
line?
no.
I sharpen mine with a diamond credit card file.
File, yep.
And you don't have to worry about the bevel. You just flip it upside down and you run it in circles and it's sharp. And I use the same one over and over and over until I nick the edge. And once I nick the edge, then I get rid of it. But those are the only tools I'm able to use now, so I sharpen mine over and over and sharpen bills for them too. And it looks great. Puts a nice edge back on, but you have to have the diamond credit card
Lapping.
file. Yeah, and with,
That's a 600 grit.
yeah, 600 grit.
Yep.
It looks great.
Yep.
Can't do the negative break ones on that though. The negative breaks, no, you can. I just started using them. Can't sharpen them, but they still last quite a while.
Okay. Good. So that's your choices in getting sharp stuff to cut wood with.
Well, if a person starts out, you need one of those things.
Oh, you could start out right with the carbide cutter. It's going to be pretty much even Steven for the money. But you know, there are a lot of people who learn how to sharpen, and sharpening is a skill that you develop through practice and muscle memory. And so you've got to be willing to put that time in to get good enough at it so that you have sharp tools all the time. Because sharp is safe, dull is dangerous. Okay. Okay, I'm going to talk just a little, let me go ahead and say, you know, what do you need to be able to sharpen stuff? And since I passed out,
Oh, you did that before.
yep, everybody gets a Sharpie, pass it along. The single most important tool that you got to sharpen with is going to be a Sharpie, okay? There's 24 of them in that bag, so if you already have them, that's fine. If you don't, take one. It's almost impossible to see where the wheel is grinding if you don't have a mark on the wheel, if you haven't dulled it down so you can see exactly what's going on. The Sharpies cost, I don't know, 50 cents each, something like that, and they'll save you easily $10 to $20 worth of steel by having a Sharpie, because you'll be able to set up your platform and the wheel or your jig correctly, and it just makes for much easier. The second thing is a good light. Now we have LED lights that are cool, don't heat up, they give you a lot of illumination, and in order to see the edge of the wheel and the platform, you're going to need some kind of good light. Now the only light I have here is a camera, and well, all right, well, we'll fix that at some point. Okay, dust protection. There are three types of N95, there are two types of N95 stuff, and there's one type of other. When you are sharpening, you're throwing off steel and you're throwing off aluminum dust or ceramic dust, and those aren't friendly to your lungs at all. This is a dust begone mask. It's a nice mask because if you're like Jeff, it's good with a beard, and it fits nicely. It doesn't. You pinch your nose here, and you tie it behind here. It's a 3-micron filter. It works very nicely. I stopped using it because it doesn't fit snugly enough around my face. Yeah, you can wash them, and that's what people like about them. They're $40, so they're a little on the pricey side when you compare them to other types of masks. This one is called a North. It's a N95 NIOSH approved. It's very nice, easy to use. It's got a sling like this, so all you have to do is pull it up like that, and you're on. You're good to go. And it's got a flexible nylon or silicone seal that makes it very nice. It's called a North. It's on your piece of paper. It's on the other side, on the reverse side of your piece of paper. Again, I like it. It's low profile. It'll fit underneath your mask, all that kind of thing. I won't need a light. I can do it without. Yeah, I'm okay. The other type is called the Eclipse, NIOSH approved. It was developed for the welding industry, and it's even better, I think, because you can get different filters here, so that if you have some chemistry that's going on, you can get the chemical stuff, and it fits over the back of your head and fits nice and tight. So these are kind of I would recommend either one of these two. They're relatively, I don't know, the back of the page has the prices on them. They're 20 to 30 bucks for them. Okay, so we've gone down through the setup. Oh, yes, we dressed the wheels, and now we need to set up for the grinding. The club has two templates that we use to grind with on this fixture here. It's a spindle gouge and a bowl gouge. And how do you know the difference between the two? Yeah, I went over here and I looked up, and what happened to my spindle gouge? Okay, I didn't bring one over. Anyway, how do you know that this is a bowl gouge? Okay. The groove in a bowl gouge is about twice as deep as it is in a spindle gouge, and the sharpening technique on a bowl gouge is a little bit different than it is for the spindle gouge. Let me get a spindle gouge over here. I don't know why I didn't bring it over. There it is. I got it. And if you look at the shape, the bowl gouge has a little bit steeper place here. The detail gouge is laid back a little bit. This is somewhere between 35 and 40 degrees. This is more like 55 to 65 degrees, and those are the two differences. I always like to start with what it is we're going to do at the wheel before we do it. So the first thing that I'm going to sharpen is going to be a scraper, and if you look at it in profile, the scraper looks like that. And what we're going to do is the wheel is going to come down like this on the top of this, and eventually it's going to come here, and when the wheel hits there, it's going to create a little burr that jumps up on the steel as the grinder goes. So when the finished look at this thing is you're going to have something that looks like this with a little burr that's standing up above it. If that burr is gone, the scraper is dull. So you have to have this little burr on here. And depending on the wheel grit will depend on how rough that burr is. So the finer the grit, the finer the burr will be, and the better it'll cut, and the more control you'll probably have over the final shaping. So when we sharpen, my rule of thumb is that I sharpen as much as I need to keep the tool sharp until we get to the final cut, and then just before I make the final cut, I sharpen the tool again and make sure that I've got the tool sharp for that final cut, and that'll cut back on the sanding by about 50%. And there are some techniques that you can do that will cut it back even more. And I know you all like to sand, so I'm not going to talk like that anymore. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Now, how do we do that? This is a club, it's a club scraper. It's a round scraper. We use them a lot. They're good for making bowls and all kinds of things. And I'm going to sharpen it on the platform here. And so I take my marker. Jeff, I'm marking up the end of my... You see that? Yep. Yeah. Okay, it's all black. Okay. Now the next thing we do is turn on the machine, right? No. What we do is we take the platform and we get it. Let's see. We align the platform with the as much as we can with the shape of the tool, and then I just spin it a little bit like that, so that now you'll see that I don't have it adjusted correctly because I just have a little mark on the very bottom. Okay, so I need to adjust that so that the platform is down more. So that's what I'm going to do, is I just tap it very gently, and now you can see that I'm a little bit higher up on the grind, but I'm still not there, so I have to do that again. And so, let's see. Okay, you can see I'm closing in on it. I'm about halfway up with the grinder. There we go.
That's why the gets mad if you change the angle.
You're right.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so now you can see that I've got set the platform so that it completely grinds evenly across there. I won't use very much steel when I grind. It'll be fairly quick, and it goes like this. Yeah. So hands on top of the platform, never underneath. Always want to be on the top. And we just make one pass. Okay. So now you can see that this whole top is complete, and I have a couple of places down below where it didn't grind. But if you pass it around and you want to check for a burr, run your thumb like that. Don't run it this way because it'll cut. We've got Band-Aids up here.
One of the things that I've seen people do is if they got 2 or 3 tools that they use regularly, they'll buy a couple extra of those the little platforms that run for the jig.
Right.
And just set it and write on it what it is. That way all you got to do is change them out. You don't have to change the angle every time you're switching the jig.
Yep.
Where do you get them now?
Where-
For woodcraft or something?
Woodcraft?
Yeah, you can.
I found them on eBay.
Yeah. You can make your own if you want to as well. I didn't bring my grand assortment. There's a grand assortment of platforms that you can use. If in your book with it is Fundamentals of Wood Turning with Rowley, that book has one that you can make out of wood. If you don't like the size of this platform, you can make a plywood piece and then underneath that plywood have some extra strips so that it can just fit on here and you have a much larger platform to work with. I use a platform a lot. I'm a fan of the 40-40 kind of grind for a lot of things, and so I set my platforms. That's a good point. Setting the platform and the angles of the platform. You can choose, as I did, to get this little dealy bop from Stuart Batty. It's his. I think he says it's Stuart Batty Tools Angle Gauge 1. There are 3 of these. And if you buy each one, you're going to spend $100. They're polished aluminum, indelibly engraved, and they've got all the fancy stuff that you'd ever want to be able to set your platforms. I stopped using this because I found that there was actually a better way. And that's one of these little devices. And if you look at over the page, you will see an outline of this. It sets the platform at 40 degrees for my Norton 3X wheel. You can cut it like this so that it's exactly repeatable time after time after time. You don't need to buy extra hardware. You just need these things because you can set the platform very, very close with it. What? Does that? Okay. Well, this is, and the 2 points set the platform to the device. So you can set the angle. I just made those. Yeah.
So the 2 feet hit the wheel and the bottom of the
Platform, right? There's 2 of them.
People don't feel comfortable making a Ron Brown
sells a 4-angle one.
Oh, okay.
Sells a whole kit of different ones for that.
Yeah.
Very reasonable.
But that's a whole lot cheaper than buying extra ones of these to have. They're being passed.
Oh, they are.
Yeah. There's a couple of other things that you can have.
He did all the woodworking show.
Okay. There, you can use a standard protractor to set your wheel to, if you want to. You can, and this one from General is one that I've found that's very helpful because you can set your tool in here and measure the angle exactly. So this is a General regular protractor, so you guys can see what all those are about. Okay, so we sharpened up a scraper. The next tool we're going to sharpen is going to be the parting tool, which is a very common tool that we use. This one is dull as it can be, and it is also so the parting tool from the top should look like this, and from the side should look like this. And the problem with this particular tool is that it's shaped like this from the top view. So it's going to cut on an angle. It's not going to cut straight. So this is how it should be. This to this is how this particular one is. So what I'm going to do is fix that and sharpen it. Yes?
Cutting angle, is that surface flat or is it concave?
Okay.
Tip back to the side.
Yeah, parting tools can be ground in a lot of different shapes. And it depends on what you want to do with them, how you grind them. The simplest is just this roughly 45 degrees concave top and bottom. Another way to do it is to do it this way, so that it's shaped kind of like a knife. There's another way to do them, which is basically a shape that's like that, which is a long shape, and it's just all it is it's you sharpen just this edge here. So there are a number of varieties. I like starting with this with a diamond shape and then move on to the other ones. There's some that are fairly expensive and some that are not so.
And I think the size of the wheel determines that too. I think
Yeah.
he was talking about the concave.
Yeah, right.
If you're grinding on a wheel, it's always going to be
Yeah.
correct?
Right, yeah.
Unless,
Well-
what if you do it flat across? Will that
Yeah,
be
what?
flat?
Yeah, I have I didn't bring it, but I have a parting tool that's shaped like this one, where this is concave and this is convex down here. That gives you a little bit more rigidity, and it helps support it a little bit better. And I use the wheel is always, when you're grinding, the last part that you grind is going to be, the wheel's going to be like that, coming down across it, so that you get your burr on the top here. With these grinds, like this one is, you always have to remember which side's the burr. And I typically grind it on this side one time and this side another time, so I keep the burr. And I just have to feel for the burr when I go to use it. Okay, so we got the Sharpie, and there's the Sharpie going on up. Okay, so everybody can see the Sharpie has blacked it up, and now I'm going to set the platform. This time I have to set it quite a bit differently than I did the last time. Okay, so now I'm just bringing it down. Doop. Bring it out. Okay, bring it down. Nope. There we go. Nope. No, I don't. This is why you do the grinding. Okay, so what I have is this. The only part that touched was this little part way back here on the heel. So I've got to do a little bit better job. There we go. Okay. Now, because this is not ground correctly, I'm grinding only this part here, and it fits. It's a shiny surface all the way from one part to the other, and this has been ground off by the grinding wheel because it's the higher part. And when I go ahead and grind this thing, we'll show you that it'll take off all the black in a uniform time, or uniform cut. Okay, so same sort of thing. If you notice when I'm doing platform work, I usually stand to the side of the wheel, and I haven't talked about the right height for these grinding machines. It depends on the grinding machine and what you're doing with it as to what height you have it. So if you've got a tall machine like the Tormac, that's down low. If you have a machine like, or a grinder like this and doing what I'm doing, this is probably as good a height as you can do it. If you're doing, I have another platform that's a little higher for doing detail work and where I'm working with real fine grinds and that kind of thing, so I can see them a little bit better. So this is, the height matters, and if you are trying to use a table like this, but you want your machine higher, just make yourself up one of these things, which is just 4 pieces of plywood screwed together that fit underneath your grinder. Okay, so we're doing the parting tool next. Let me get this thing on. Same deal as we had with the scraper. Hands on top. I've got the tool choked up. I'm not down here, I'm up here. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to move back and forth across the wheel to straighten it out. One of the troubles with the Wolverine systems are that they loosen up as you're grinding, because any little vibration loosens them up, so you got to keep tightening them. Okay. As Cindy Drozda said, everybody gets catches and everybody makes mistakes. And so just now what I tried to do was to change this platform, get it out away from the wheel a little bit so it wouldn't get so banged up. But in the process I've unset the setting that I had there, and so it's not going to grind the way I want it to grind. So I have to stop and go back and fix it.
From my perspective, it looked like you weren't holding the tool at 90 degrees to the wheel. Was that intentional or was that accidental?
That was intentional, because I've got an angle that's like this on this, and in order to correct that, I had to hold it like you saw.
So once you get that corrected, then you would hold it perfectly.
You would normally hold it just perpendicular and go back and forth across to take care of it, and you wouldn't have any close to the duration that I had on this. I mean, I basically have ground this thing 5 times longer than I normally would grind a parting tool, and it's only to correct this problem that I've got with the angle. I have no idea. No, this is a club tool. All the club tools have the milk paint. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you know, I learned too. And the thing about sharpening and learning a skill like sharpening is do it over and over and over again, so you get the muscle memory and you understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And if you've got a problem, stop. Just don't do it anymore and get some help. We're all here to help. And it's not like we haven't asked for help ourselves. You know, I still ask for help. So.
This week I ran across an old article by Alan Lathe on sharpening, and he shows a picture of using a mirror on the side. Has anybody done that here in this club?
No. Alan Lacer's, I've got his full set of articles he did with a metallurgist from MIT or someplace fancy. And he has great ideas, and he has a lot of patience, and he has done this a lot. So I believe what he says, but from the practical standpoint of doing those kind of things, intellectually they're great. But from a practical standpoint, I haven't found them to be useful. I've used mirrors. There's a way of using mirrors when you're putting legs in stools and things like that. And there are a whole bunch of applications of mirrors to this kind of stuff. But I just haven't found them particularly useful. But and anybody who's interested in sharpening, you need to go to the AAW and go to the Allen Lacer. And I forgot the gentleman's name who's a metallurgist, but they did an extensive. I think there's 3 or 4 articles about how to get the best possible edge on a tool to get the best possible finish on a piece of wood. So it's good. Mike?
Excuse me, I'm backing up just a second, Hank, but when I got my machine and my blue wheels,
Mm-hmm.
I just could not get rid of the vibration.
Right.
And ultimately, in desperation, I bought a set of those machined aluminum washers from Craft Supply.
Yep.
And it was like magic.
Yes.
Those steel washers that come with those things just aren't right. But those machine washers, they did the trick. So
Yes.
if anybody's had that problem.
Yes.
It was a fairly inexpensive fix.
Yeah, Jeff had that problem. Everybody's had that problem. I've used them. I'm sorry I didn't talk about them. The Craft Supply aluminum machined washers at $15 a piece or so, they're not that expensive. The next application or the next tool that you use is one that Cindy Drozda likes, which is the Wolverine system for balancing wheels, which is about a $70 price tag on that, and they work wonderfully too. They really are good things to have if you've got that kind of problem. What I found is that the blue wheels come with plastic inserts, and the plastic inserts are very sensitive to any kind of mismanagement or torque, any kind of inequity in the alignment here. And so when you go to tighten up the nut that's behind here, you need to be very careful not to move the wheel while you're tightening the nut. And that sounds like an oxymoron because you got to hold on. How do you hold on to this wheel when you're tightening it? Well, you hold on to this wheel when you tighten it, and that gets the problem away. And I was able to salvage. I have the aluminum discs on 2 of my blue wheels, but the other 2 don't need them because I've been able to just balance them out.
Hank, point to where you're talking about those aluminum discs, right there?
No, they would go in here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
On the axle.
on the axle. They replace the wheel comes with a hole that's too big for the axle that's on these. And so what we're talking about is a washer that fits in there over the axle and to the wheel, and it's been drilled. It's a bushing, right. So it's a good thing. Okay. Any other questions? I mean, that's what this is all about. I'll try to answer them. If I don't know, I'll say so. It's
Just add a little diversity. So this same setup, can this same setup be used for something like a sander or a larger or anything like that? The jigs are set up at the right angles?
You're setting the angle, so you can vary that any way you want. The 1-inch belt sander stuff, I have plans at the house for how you can take a 4-inch belt sander from Harbor Freight and turn it into a belt sanding system. That's out there on the internet. There's a lot of ways that people use belt sanders to sharpen tools, and the imagination of man is fertile.
One thing that's different is, well, that's about 1 inch in width as well on a disc. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure why that couldn't be used as well.
Yeah, if you search the internet, you're going to find a lot of this stuff. And looking at a lot of this stuff, I try to be careful to verify what the people are saying is at least reasonable. There's some stuff out there that gets dangerous, and there's a type of burning of wood called what is it? Fractals. Yeah, fractals, where you apply a lot of high voltage electricity to the thing with a solution over the top, and it makes these funny little burn marks in there that a lot of people really like. The only problem is that there's been people electrocuted doing that. And the system that is used to provide the electricity comes from microwaves, comes from all signage, neon signs and that kind of stuff, and it's all dangerous as hell. So unless you are prepared to take the risk of dying, you shouldn't do it. Just don't do it. And that's the AAW thing.
The one thing with the belts,
Yeah,
is remember you're putting a cutting edge into the belt.
right.
And if you're not careful, you'll catch it and you'll tear your belt. It gets really exciting real fast.
Yes. You had a comment?
There was a guy that I've watched on YouTube, goes by Captain Eddie, Big Guy Productions. He makes a jig to go on a Delta sander, belt sander, or disc sander to utilize that. We'll show you how to make it in one of his videos if you're a tinker.
Yeah.
Captain Eddie.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, that's the fair game because a lot of us have tried stuff, and a lot of us have experiences. Some good, some bad. Yes.
One of our learning things, maybe one of the things we can put down in the future is jig making, where you guys can come in and show us how to make all the various jigs, measure stuff and things.
Okay. Jigs. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna get this back. Oop. Wrong side. Oop. Oop. Okay, good enough.
Hank, this is really exciting. Turn that doggone thing off.
I'm sorry, I apologize. The reason why I took a little extra time in here, it's like sanding, you know. Sometimes you get what I call counterintuitive piece of work to do, and what I had to do here with this parting tool, in order to get this top part square, was I had to do what I call a double grind here, where I had to actually lift the handle up a little bit and do the end of it. But it is sharp and it is square now, and it's a little bit warm. So that's how you do a parting tool.
When you sharpen that parting tool, you only do one side of it.
One side, and if you look at the
One's longer than the other one.
yep, one's longer than the other one. The next time I grind it, I'll grind the other side of it, and you'll see that the side that should go up is the side that has the double grind. Okay. Excuse. The skews, I talked about skews for a long time in December. The only thing that I would say about skews is that there are two ways to sharpen them. There's a very grind jig that it has an arm with a long leg like this, so that you can do the skew such that it's like this, and then it goes like that. And you can grind it that way, or you can use a platform to get it fairly sharp. the one thing with skews is that when you sharpen them, they require honing. The way that the cutting edge is presented to the wood is such that unless it's honed, it's going to create tear out, and it's not going to be a smooth surface. And so you need, this is a 600 grit diamond hone, and because this is a little bit concave, you can just lay the hone up here against it. About 3 or 4 of those, turn it over, 3 or 4 of those. Now what happens when I'm grinding or using the hone this way? Well, it creates a burr on the other side, right? Yeah. So what you have to do is that after you've gotten done doing this 3 or 4 times and this 3 or 4 times, now you need to come back to the other side that you just finished on and do a kind of light swipe that takes off that burr that you raised on the opposite side. So this should be, this should take your fingernail off very nicely. And that's how I check, Yeah. Well, the way that I check any kind of tool like that I've honed is usually with my fingernail. If it skids on your fingernail, it's dull. If it sticks on your fingernail, you've got it sharpened enough to work with the wood.
Consider it a magic.
I was telling Hank, Shakespeare wrote a play, Taming of the Shrew.
Okay. Okay.
He never heard of it.
What's the most common grip that you use to start with? Like,
For what?
should I have? Like, if I'm going to buy a honing tool,
Either 400 or 600.
of course,
Yeah. This is a 600. This is a standard thing. This is a 400 grit, and I'll talk about it when I talk about the bowl gouges and others. Okay. The next tool that we typically talk about in sharpening is sharpened on the platform as well, and it's the roughing gouge. Now, unless you really want me to, I'm not going to sharpen a roughing gouge. But I am going to talk about how to sharpen a roughing gouge, because there's nothing different than what I just did. I mean, it's one of those things. There are 2 types of roughing gouges. There's one that's shaped like this, which is kind of an open shape, and then there's one that's got a straight, and a connecting piece in it. Okay? And these straight pieces are for really removing rapid removal of wood. And the ones that have the straights are usually the heavier types of roughing gouges. And the roughing gouge is sharpened in the same way you would do a scraper. You basically mark it up, set your pattern, your platform to it, and in one kind of a sweep, you sharpen it. With the ones that have the straight on them, you sharpen the straights first, and then you do the blend across the bottom. So it's easy. I don't know if we have. Peter's got the one that's got the straights on it. And typically, when you look at the end of a roughing gouge, the end of a roughing gouge needs to be like this when you look across the end of it. A lot of them get this upper edge here rolled back and get it so that it's not a straight edge, it's just a rounded thing there. And what I tell people is sharpen this until it comes back straight, and then you've got it. I would not waste the steel, because a roughing gouge is a rough thing. You don't do fine work with roughing gouges. There is a technique of grinding roughing gouges to a slightly different shape so that it has a wing on it. It's a European grind. It isn't. I haven't seen it used much here in the United States, but it is a useful one for when you're trying to rough out things like candlesticks and stuff like that, where you're wanting to create the hollows as you go, so that you can use the spindle gouges later. Like I said, I'm just a little concerned that I'm not going to get to the end of this thing in an orderly way. Yes. Okay, any of the scrapers is going to be somewhere between 65 and 85 degrees, with 70 being the most common. Any of the parting gauges I already talked about. Roughing gouges are roughly the same, somewhere between 55 and 65 degrees is usually what you see on those. I used to be obsessed with the angles on the grinds. And since I've gotten more experience, I've become less inclined. There are basically two angles that you want to be familiar with. One is what I call the 40-degree angle, because that's used on a lot of spindle gouges and a lot of stuff. 40 degrees is the angle of a beaver's tooth. And so if a beaver's tooth can do it, a 40 degree can do it, you know, kind of thing. And,
The Ellsworth, is that a different angle or is that a different contour?
the Ellsworth, in olden days, the bowl gouges used to be just one shape, and they were shaped kind of like this, with the end kind of square, or a V-shaped with the end kind of square like that. What Ellsworth did after he went and toured Europe and thought about it for a while is he created an edge where the front looks like that, and then he has these edges, wings on them, so that he could cut not only with this front part here, and it's shaped like this, so he could cut not only here, he could use this wing back here to cut as well. And so that is what differentiated his grinds from anybody else's. And because this was so long, this wing this wing is so long, that's what differentiated what they call the fingernail grind. And there's half a dozen different cuts, and when I passed around the templates, you saw all the different angles that people have put on these things. So people get inventive. Now, I'm going to talk about the spindle gouge and the bowl gouge here in just a minute, and I'll tell you why the club uses what they use. Okay, any other questions about that stuff? Yes, Adrian.
When we get to the bowl gouges, can you explain what double bevel grinds do and like
Sure.
talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
I'm gaining some interest in it a few days ago.
Yeah. Well, the bowl gouge is kind of a different thing. Okay. So we've done rough and gouge. Okay, spindle gouges. We've kind of got up to the spindle gouges. Spindle gouges have been around for a long, long time. And and there's three different kinds of flutes that are in spindle gouges. There's a normal spindle gouge, which has a flute that's a little deeper than this. This is what I call a detail gouge, which is a little shallower yet. And then there's a shallow detail gouge. And they're used for different purposes. Mostly the spindle gouges, as people learned in the third Saturday week we had, are for getting into places and creating coves and beads, and they're great for that. And they do a few other things, rolling beads on the sides of bowls and things like that. They're good. And this is a club grind. It's fairly short. And for this, we'll use go over to the Wolverine and use the pocket and the jig on this. Now, Peter has the one that goes to this. Yep. Okay. Anyhow, Wolverine has this jig. And it's a kind of a neat thing. The hole size on the standard jig is what you see here. This is an older version. The newer versions of this thing have something that looks like that. It's just a piece of nylon on it. And it has an arm here. Setting of the arm is important. Thompson Tools has when they sell a tool, they have a mock-up of this thing that they give you and show you how to set this leg so you can get the grind that they put on it at the factory. We've chosen to use this type of leg angle on it simply because it works for the club. And if I change it, Peter's going to get angry with me, Don's going to get angry with me, Charlie's going to get angry with me. A whole lot of people are going to get angry with me because I changed it.
No, we love you.
Okay. If you talk to people like Jimmy Clues and other people who use spindle gouges, they have a different leg angle. It doesn't make a bit of difference, guys. It's what you learn to use. It's how you learn to use the sharpness of the tool to make coves and beads and those kinds of things. So the basic drill. Spindle gouges. I don't have to talk about that. Okay, so we have, there are two templates here that we use for the club. This is the spindle gouge template. It's roughly 5.5 inches or 5 3/4 inches, something like that, to give you this nice angle. And so the way that you set up the machine is you put the template in the pocket, you bring the template up to the wheel, and you want to make sure that you're square here, and then you lock it in place. And then the next thing you do, oops, so now I lost that, okay. Then the next thing you do, okay,
How do you, the last time you did this demonstration, I usually make this, but I was left completely stumped on how you made those for the distance, yeah.
oh, this,
Oh, good.
yeah, this is,
How did you make that exactly?
Just trace it.
all I did was, got a square piece. This is 5 5/8 from here to here, and I wanted to make sure that it was 6 inches from here to the top of the wheel, and that's all it is. And it's cut out here to avoid these edges that are here, so that when it fits on here, you don't have, it fits into the bottom of the pocket here, and it avoids the bar holders and stuff like that.
Okay.
And that's why it's shaped the way it is. There's no, I mean, it's not a special shape, but it's a shape we use.
I think maybe, Hank, we need to say that two angles are at play here. It's this thing, and then how far back the skirt will go depends on this angle.
Yes, well, yeah, the wings are controlled by this arm. You're right. The wings are controlled by this arm. The nose is controlled by how far you are from the wheel here. Right.
Right.
Okay?
So it's your own preference, but
Well, the other thing that I think is important, geez, I know. The other thing that's important with all of this stuff is that you get a habit and stick with it. You don't want to be changing the variables on these things until you really understand how you're cutting and you've done some repetitive work. And somebody was saying that how many bowls do you need to get good at it? I kind of liken, I learned how to cut Morrison 10 joints, and I thought at first if I did 50 of them, I'd probably be pretty good at it. Well, it took me 125 before I got good enough to where I was willing to do it on furniture grade stuff. It's the same thing with these tools, is you need to use them, 200 is not an unreasonable amount, 200 times, and then you'll start to get good and you'll start to understand it. Go ahead.
I'm assuming that you always have that leg right in the middle of the...
It's in the pocket here.
It always be in the pocket.
Yeah, it's got to be back against the pocket. I've got a block here that I use because I use the Ellsworth grind a lot. This block kicks the pocket up almost 2 inches, and I need that because that's what the Ellsworth, when this thing was set up, that's how this corner here needs to be roughly 4 inches from the center line of, down 4 inches from the center line of the wheel. And so that's why I have this little block in there so I can kick it up, and it's got a round hole in it, not the V-notch that has. And then it's got a magnet here so that I'm sure when I put it in here, it sits in there correctly.
The round is a lot nicer than those sharp edges of the cat.
Yeah, and I've seen some of these guys grind this to a point, to get a little bit more accuracy. I'm not sure that's required, but that's me.
Smoother to turn.
Yeah. You had another question, Adrian?
Not a question, really a comment. Going back, people were asking how many times I go this, how many times that. I don't think people should really just start like counting. It would get obsessed with just trying to figure out how many times until you get good at something. I used to think that way, and now I just focus on just being in the workshop, turning, sharpening when I have to.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be something that you should worry about. When you will get good at it is when you will get good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. A lot of people are quicker learners than others, so I've had students that they were disappointed because they didn't do this thing at this time, and it took them 3 times longer than what the average is, and that's okay. That's just people's style of learning. It's different. Okay, so what I've done for the spindle is what I did for the others, is I've marked it up with the black, and I do the same thing here that I did with the, and I always love it when this happens. You can see that the tip of this is all bright and shiny, right up here at the very tip. So what that means is that if I leave it at this setting, I'm gonna grind off a whole lot of steel and lose a whole lot of steel before I get it ground down to here. Now, there's 2 choices I can make. I can say, okay, I want this angle because it's the standard club angle, and somebody's ground this thing to a different angle. And so what I can do is I can just create a little rim right here of that angle. And then you're talking about taking away the bottom of this and to get it out of the way, and you can do that. So what I find is that if I've got, for the club's work, I grind to what the club standard is, because I know that's what you're used to teaching with, everybody's used to teaching with. And if I have to make a little sacrifice, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this grind not extend down quite as far, and just have it, and then I'll pass it around and you'll see what the result is. And it's going to be a double bevel, and it's going to be on purpose. I'm not going to grind off everything, the heel on this particular spindle, because normally you don't need to do that. Although Cindy Drozda, with the grind that Don has on here, she does that. She takes away a good part of the heel, so it doesn't hurt her.
He hasn't mentioned one thing, and that is the comparison of doing it with the jig versus freehand. Takes a lot of steel to get good enough to do it that way. And half of the professionals that you talk to use a jig. The other half say, oh no, you can't be a woodturner unless you do it freehand. Well, I've tried it both ways, and I ain't a woodturner because I like the jig.
Well,
I watched him, and I don't know how he does it.
It took me...
He's a professional, that's for sure.
I learned the 40-40 from Ashley Harwood, who is a student of Stuart Batty. So she taught me the Stuart Batty method of sharpening that. It took me fully 2 weeks of sharpening to get good at it, good enough at it where it was repeatable and I didn't have to worry that I had something screwed up. If you try to use the 40-40 on real small tools, it's the devil to do. I mean, it really is hard to do. But anyway, that's another story. And we're sharpening a spindle gouge here. So. Okay, I am holding the tool like this. I'm choked up here, I'm choked up here. My hand is away from the wheel so that I don't have to worry about my fingers getting all gnarly. And I stand directly in front of the wheel. I want to make sure that I pivot here. I do 1/2 first. And then I blend. And that's all there is to it.
Hank, you are sharpening something that's been sharpened at those angles before. What happens if you go out, buy some used tools or something, eBay or yard sale or whatever, and you want to set them to a set thing? You don't know the grain, so putting a magic marker on there and trying to set your wheel there.
Well, what I do is I use the magic marker for lots and lots of stuff. And one of the things is, the question I have is, how much steel am I going to take off in this operation? And what shape is it going to be when I get through? So if I've got a setup like this that's a known setup that I've used for years and years and years, and I want a tool to be the same shape as the ones I've used for years and years, I'll set that up, blacken it up, and see what I'm going to have to do. And then I make a choice of am I going to do something like this, which is basically take off the top edge and not mess around with the bottom, or am I going to have to take off a whole bunch of bottom to get the top edge the shape that I want? So knowing that before you go in, it really sets the parameters for how much grinding you're going to do. And it's important to think about that. Now again, you've got a burr raised on this, and if you want a finer burr, what you can do is take a small file. This is a diamond file, 400 grit. It's got a convex top to it, and it's got a flat part to it. And because I did this on a wheel, I can take this and go around 1, 2, and I'm doing it to the top of this, just to hone it. And if you're working at the lathe and you want to get a little bit sharper edge on it, you can use a hone like this to make it sharper. So there you are, a sharp tool like that. Yes, sir.
So you sharpen one side, and you sharpen the other side. Do you go all the way up to the tip? As you're coming up, or do you?
I go all the way up.
So you're sharpening the tip twice as much as the side.
Well, no, you sharpen to get the tip round. One of the problems that we run into, and this happens a lot, is that when we sharpen, we get a misshape here. So you see I've got a little pointy right there? That's going to lead to a catch. Guaranteed. Always will lead to a catch when you have a little pointy like that. What you want is a nice round shape like that, which has no pointies on it. It's just even all the way around, so that when you're working with the wood, when you come in contact with the wood, it's a uniform kind of contact, not a pointy contact where you're banging. Now, people will say, okay, well, I want a pointy contact because you've got to make a pointy contact, and I'm sorry about that, but yeah, you want to make a pointy contact, you need to make the radius, the curve uniform all the way around and symmetrical. Because anytime you get some asymmetry in there, you're going to get catches and you're going to get uncontrollable tool. And so that's why you need to make sure. So what I do is I basically sharpen from here to here, here to here, and then I blend at the end. Because that tip blending is a very sensitive operation. I mean, you just touch it and it's gone. I mean, so you can wind up with a tip that looks more like that, which is, a mess to clean up.
Do you ever go one side all the way to the other side in one sweep?
It depends on what I'm sharpening. I tend not to do that because that's a much more complicated move. And speaking of that, I didn't talk about this yet because I was getting to the bowl gouge. But at any rate, when you're at a grinding station, you don't want to be stiff-armed and all tensed up and all that kind of thing. You want to be feet apart, shoulders over your feet. You want to have a little bit of bend in your knees. You want to have your arms comfortable. And if you've got to go from, say, a reach like this to end up uncomfortable at the end, you don't want to do that. You want to be uncomfortable at the beginning of the sweep and then get to your comfort zone when you come back. And I rarely get myself in a position where I have to move my feet. I just don't like doing that because it upsets the geometry that I've established to get my nice and smooth grind. So it's and the other thing is I keep my hands calm. Very little of what I do, maybe a roll I might do with my hands, but most of it is with the whole body because it's a much smoother movement. If you try to do something with your hands, just like you saw me with the pen there, a lot of times you get little jerkies in there that you can't control as well as.
Before you cut your thumb there?
No, I stabbed my thumb. I had a sharp tool that I brought in a box, and it went through the end of the box into my thumb, and I didn't want to. Okay. Bowl gouges. Okay. Bowl gouges are a little. Yeah, well, they're more fun. That's not harder. They're just more fun. I've gone off with my pen somewhere. Anyway, what did I do? Is that there? There it is. Okay. Okay. Bowl gouge. Yeah, this is a bowl gouge. It says so right there. Okay. This is a good bowl gouge for a demo. Let me come back over here. Let me get this. Okay. So, how are we doing there? Okay. This is a good thing to demo because it's a bowl gouge that's been kind of, it's got the heel knocked out here. And it's got a double bevel up to here, and it's got an extra bevel right there. But you get the idea that this is about 55-degree angle here, and then this is the wing that goes back, and this is always convex. If you get it straight or concave, you've got big troubles, because when it gets to be concave, it catches a lot. And I'll show you that on the board here. So the wings need to be like that. If you have a wing that is straight and your wood is curved, that's going to be okay. But it's going to be okay because the wood will contact the straight edge. But if you have an edge that's like that and this is the end of it, that's going to catch. You don't know whether it's going to catch here or over here, and so it's a bad situation. And so, and the same thing goes with the nose of the bowl gouge. It needs to be a nice curved shape. It needs to be smooth and reliably smooth. Okay, now to do bowl gouges, if you got a big fat bowl gouge, you got a problem with the little tiny hole that's in the standard. What did I do with it? I don't know what I did. Oh, there it is. Okay, so you can see the difference in the hole sizes here. So you can order this type to take care of 3/4 inch bowl gouges if you want to use them. These are good for up to about 5/8, and then they don't work no more. No, this is an old version, right? But if you order one, you're going to get the same size hole in the new version as you got in this one. This is a special order kind of deal. Packard sells them. They have the larger opening, and they're set up for the larger bowl gouges and that kind of thing. They also have another jig, which is quite nice. And this is called the Varigrind jig. See if I can remember how to use this sucker now. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So you put your bowl gouge or whatever you want to grind in through here, and you put this arm in lieu of your V-pocket, and now you've got a jig that captures in 3 dimensions, so that you can grind precisely exactly what you wanted to grind. And this is really set up, and you can vary it so that you can get different shapes on there. So this does away with some of the slipping off the edge and that kind of thing. So I've used this thing about 4 times. It's indexed down here so you're repeatable, and it's indexed here so it's repeatable. I don't know why I bought it.
Why didn't you sell it?
That's when you know you've done a lot of wood turning.
Oh, Mike. Okay.
I'm like,
Okay. So we're back to the bowl gouge here, and what I need to do is I need to blacken it up, and I need to shift my wheel. Okay, let's see what we got here. Again, like I said, I find the Sharpie is just indispensable for letting you know what you got and helping you make decisions about what you need to do. Okay, and
What color do you use, Charlie?
That's also an advantage to the club. Before you buy something, you ask around. Have you tried this? Yes, I have. Do you like it? No, I don't.
call this a little dose of reality.
And Don is the one that made up all these jigs for us, for the club, and for the many, many years ago.
Okay, so what I did was I adjusted the arm out to the bowl gouge length, which I think is 6.5 inches. I can tell you what it is exactly.
The contact between the whatever that thing is, that has to hit the center of the wheel?
Which,
No, just the wheel.
this has to just hit the wheel. We've set the distance out, and the contact with this should be exactly what this grind is, if it's ground correctly.
No, I mean, not the tool, I mean the jig that you were just using.
Oh, this, yeah, this needs to sit square so that this is level here, and it needs to just contact the wheel right here.
And it's hitting the middle of the...
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's tall enough so that it hits the middle of the wheel. You can't make it less tall than that. Okay. Okay.
There's a time that you would hit that so you don't waste the steel.
Yeah. And what happens is that if I'm going to sharpen this tool, and I have the 2-inch stick out here, and I have this distance here, when I sharpen this tool, now the tool is shorter. So I have to recheck the 2-inch stick out, and I have to reset and make sure that, because the wheel wears too, I need to make sure that this is correct. So after I grind on a wheel for 5-6 times, I'll check this distance to make sure that I'm still there.
Using a 2-inch stick out, you have blocks for 2, 2.5, you said you had a half a dozen more.
Yeah.
When do you use a different stick out?
It depends on what I'm trying to do with the tool. Because like I said, I'm a curious guy and I'm an old tool fool, and I try different things just to see how I can do it. And so I have them from roughly 1 3/4, I think, is the shortest. Well, no, 1 1/2 I've got, all the way out to about 3 1/2. And depending on the I was real curious about this geometry and how it affected particularly spindle gouges. And so I did a lot of just trial and error kind of stuff. That's one of the reasons I sold a lot of the tools that I did, because I was trying them and seeing how they work. And like I said, you get, after you've done enough trial and error, done enough of this stuff, you start to understand the principles that really govern how you're cutting the wood. And the whole thing that I emphasize is, sharp is safe, dull is dangerous. You need really sharp tools, and you need to know how to sharpen them so that they do what you expect them to do every time. And that takes keeping the tools consistent with jigs, and using a consistent technique yourself teaches you how to do the cuts that you want to do on the wood. And some people who do spindle work more than, like pins and stuff like that, more than bowls or flat work, have different kind of angles that they use. And that's one of the reasons why I brought the templates around today, was just to show you that, hey, there's a variety of stuff out there. What you need to do is just to choose the ones that you, and keep it simple. I mean, you know, I'm down now to where I have a bowl gouge and a 40/40 gouge and a detail gouge, and that's what I've got to do most of my turning. The rest of it is what I call specialty tools, like parting tools and vortex tools, and I have one that I use to cut the angles on when I'm doing bottom work, and I want to grab them with the I have a little jig that does that, or a little tool that does that for me, so I don't have to mess around with, you know, any more time than I have to get the job done. That's all you want to do. Okay, bowl. Okay. So bowl is just like spindle. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check it, see what I've got. Okay, this time we happen to get lucky, and if you look at that, it's exactly what the bowl is. There's a stripe right down the middle. I think you can see it, where it's all shiny. So I don't have to really worry too much about this in terms of taking off too much steel, and you'll see that it goes very, very quickly. This is a dull gouge, so we'll just do that. Edge. So, wheel comes up, there's a little bit of vibration in this machine, so wheel comes up to speed, and I have to stand there for a few seconds to let everything stabilize so it's not vibrating. And then I put this on the wheel, and I did one half twice, and then I did a blend, and that's it. Doesn't take long, it's as sharp as you need. Looked a little ugly when we started, but now it's fine.
What does a double bevel grind
Okay, so if I took off what I call the chin here, that's a double bevel grind. One of the problems with any of the tools that have a bevel on them, where you're riding the bevel, is that bevel pushes on the wood. And so the longer that bevel is, the more wood it's pushing against. That's good in the sense that, hey, if you have a given force, there's more area to distribute that force over, so it's a lighter touch. But the other thing is, if you're doing a fine touch and you're doing a finishing cut, you don't want much of a bevel. Like I said, Sidney Drosdale uses about a 1/16 of an inch. Mahoney on his bold gouges uses about an 1/8 of an inch. So that relief really reduces the length of the bevel and allows you to, and if you can control the cut very well, allows you to make finer cuts than you would otherwise be able to do. Cuts down on the sanding kind of stuff. There's a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about that are important. This is my favorite negative rake scraper. A lot of people get all concerned about, hey, what are the angles on the negative rake scraper? It doesn't matter. As long as this one's around somewhere between 20 and 45, that's okay. As long as this one is somewhere between 45 and 60, it's okay. Some people like to have them exactly the same. I pass it around just to show you what a negative rake scraper is. It needs to be heavy. If you're thinking about an 1/8 inch thick piece of steel for negative rake scraping, it generally doesn't work simply because you don't have the mass behind it to avoid vibration. And that's all I'm talking about. Okay, it's sharp. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Top angle is somewhere between 25 to 45, and the bottom angle is somewhere between 45 to around 65, 70, something like that. A lot of people like to use the little cutters. Bill Millette likes to use the little cutters. They fit in the tool with some screws, and it's always a chore to sharpen these little puppies because you can do it in the tool if you want to, but the tool handle gets in the way and it's not as easy to use. There's a thing called a button buggy, which you can make. It's a block that's about this long and about that wide, and you put the tool in that and tighten it down with it. A couple of years ago, I was at the Tennessee Symposium, and I got to talk with John Jordan a while. And this is the tool that he uses to do all his hollowing and do all his interior work for his bowls and stuff. And he's a talented guy. I mean, he's got bowls in the White House and bowls in this museum and that museum, and he makes about 60 of them a year, and he makes a good living at it, and he sells his tools. This is his tool to sharpen the little carbide things, and it's really neat. I mean, when you look at it, all it is a piece of steel drilled out, threaded, and another piece of steel hung on it. And so how does it work? You basically drill a hole. There's a hole drilled in here, and that little pin sits in that hole. I blacken the surface like I did for anything else, and then I put and then I put this up to the wheel, try it out, and then I set it to the wheel, and then now I have a little thing that's really easy for me to hold on to. It keeps my hands away from the wheel, and I can shape it any way I want to shape it. So it's a John Jordan hole. It's a little jig that I found very useful. It's not very expensive either. I don't think it's not more than $20. It's less, and you can make one pretty cheap. There was one other thing I had here. Oh yeah, this. Yeah.
You only as a penny.
Okay.
Rather than
I could save some money, you mean? Okay. But copper is softer than nickel. Okay. I'll take it as advisement. Okay. Now, everybody talks about, I've talked about the club's grinder and how it works. And for the money, you can't beat it. It's the least expensive way that you can go about getting your tools done. But I know that everybody's heard about CBN, cubic nitride. Yeah, cubic boron nitride. Okay, so if diamond is harder than cubic boron nitride, why aren't they using diamond wheels?
Because they're carbon-based. I've heard the carbon in diamond says it goes up with steel, it tracks with steel and they come up. Diamond is great for carbide, CBN is better for high-speed steel.
But I've got a money for this diamond thing. Isn't that any good?
Yes.
Because it's not high. Yeah. Yeah, when they started making synthetic diamonds, they found out in a hurry that they weren't very good for grinding steels. Because, as he was talking about it, the diamonds have an affinity for the carbon that's in most steels. And so, as a consequence, a diamond just doesn't last. So what they did was they make these aluminum wheels, and they put this plating on them, and then they put this grit, which is cubic boron nitride, and they come in and they cost. So if you're talking about $50-$60 for this wheel, you're going to be talking about $120 to $200 for this wheel. And what are the advantages of this? Well, for one thing, it only throws out steel. It doesn't throw out any other grit, so you don't have quite the mess. But I can tell you, when I took this grinder off the table, there was a whole big pile of steel there. So you still have to use the mask and all that kind of stuff. Steel's not good for you. The other thing that people say is you never have to true them, and that's true. You don't. They run real nice and true, and for some, and it depends on the manufacturer of the CBN wheel, they sell a aluminum oxide stick that you use to clean the steel out of the wheel. It's only the wheels that Packard sells, and I think they're English wheels, that need that stick to keep them clean. I just didn't bring it today. The other thing that people say, well, I should get a big, heavy grinder. Spend more money on the grinder, you're going to get a smoother grind, it's going to be a lot easier to use, and all that kind of thing. So I went around and I looked at the Baldor, is the grinder for anybody that's doing industrial work in the United States, Baldor. And those grinders sell for somewhere north of $600, $800, and can run as high as $2,500 if you want. But they're heavy. They weigh 60 to 75 pounds. I'm old and tired, and I don't want to carry around something like that or move something like that around. So this one was about 25 pounds. It's set up so that I can use my Tormac jigs with it. It's set up with 2 CBN. This one's a fine wheel. Yeah, this is a fine. This is an extra fine wheel. So it's 180 grit, 320 grit here. It's variable speed. I can run it all the way up to 4,000 RPM, starting at right around 500 RPM. And a lot of people like this part of it. That's running at 2,000 RPM now. There's hardly any, there is vibration, but there's hardly any, and it's quiet. Now if that's worth $1,500 to you, that's, go get it, you know. I like it because I just find that it's more peaceful. It's closer to the Tormac. I've told you what I came here to tell you, but talk about. I hope that you've learned something. I don't pretend to know it all, like I said. If you've got questions. Pretty smart for an old fart, huh?
Hit him with a hammer.
Pardon?
Hit him with a hammer.
Okay. If there's any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to do that.